said, primarily is going to be specifically on presidential power. One of the concepts that we'll get to today is this idea of roles of the presidency, and that's just a really easy way to classify presidential power and understand all the different jobs that a president has. Okay? We are going to start by looking at 3 quotes about presidential power, and I'm going to ask some people to read if they're so willing. So this first quote was written by President Lincoln. Okay, so you've got the picture there on your paper. So we're going to read this quote, and we're going to try to understand what is the quote telling us about presidential power. So who's willing to read?
I'll read.
Thanks, Bree.
I have never understood that the presidency conferred upon me an unrestricted right to act. I did understand, however, that my oath is to preserve the Constitution to the best of my ability, imposed upon me the duty of preserving by which indispensable means. That government, the nation of the Constitution, was organic law. Was it possible to lose the nation and yet preserve the Constitution? I felt that measures otherwise unconstitutional might be lawful by becoming indispensable to the preservation of the Constitution, through the preservation of the nation. Right or wrong, I assume this ground and now avow it. I could not feel that to my best ability I have even tried to preserve the Constitution. If I should permit the wreck of the government, country, and Constitution altogether, I claim not to have control even, but confess firmly that the event has control too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so President Lincoln, okay, what I want you guys to do is at your table, I want you to think about, Lincoln is obviously talking about the job of a president and what a president should do. Think about the time period in which he was president. Think about his place in history and how we've regarded him. And then once you guys can kind of say, like, what is his view of the power of a president? Like, what guides it, what defines it? You guys can talk about it and then just record it there in your little box. And I will ask you to share. So what is he telling us about the power of the president? Is anybody needing any help?
What do you mean by permit the wreck?
So basically he's saying I can't allow the government to be destroyed. If I permit the wreck of the government, then I've allowed the country to fall apart. So we all remember Lincoln was president when? What was going on when Lincoln was president? The Civil War, right? Okay, so let's kind of brainstorm a little bit. Some of the things you might remember. I know it's been a while, 8th grade history. What were the things that, like right here it talks about, it says, I felt that measures otherwise unconstitutional might become lawful by becoming indispensable to preservation of the Constitution through the preservation of the nation. That's really like the key statement there. What is he trying to say?
Is he trying to say, like, sometimes, like, the nation's needs come before the Constitution?
Very good. That in order to keep the country together, I might actually have to violate the Constitution. Can you imagine a situation where you might do something that normally would be unlawful, but you're doing it to serve a greater good? Like what? Like what? I heard a yeah from a boy back there. It's got to be one of you guys. Who said yeah? Like, what would you do? Like, what? Arvin, was it you? What?
No.
Okay, well, we're going to pretend. So, so give me an example of something, a time where you might do something that's unlawful, but at the end of the day, you're doing it to serve a greater good.
Whenever I was little, and I'm like highly inspired, so I got bit by mushrooms, so my parents were speeding to the hospital. That's unlawful, so go way over the speed limit, but they're doing it because I was dumb.
But if they do, absolutely, that's perfect. That's a great example. So break the law to save Peyton's life.
Yeah.
Absolutely, okay? And do we all in this room accept that that's okay?
Yes.
All right? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to equate what Lincoln was saying about his power in relationship to that, like his view on the Constitution and his view on presidential power. Okay? Cool.
Which line did you say that was?
Wait, are we just supposed to write that line, or can we
No, summarize it. Yeah, I don't want you to write that line. I want you to tell me what Lincoln says about presidential power. So for those of you who are done, when you look at your picture, you're trying to figure out who the next person is. Unlawful is a word, yeah. All right, so our next quote is from Teddy Roosevelt. So again, another person who has their head carved in a mountain. Right? Think about everything you know about Teddy. I didn't think it was that funny. Everything you know about Teddy Roosevelt in terms of when he was history, or what time period he was president. Think about the things you studied in U.S. history about that time period. And who wants to read from Teddy Roosevelt? Thank you, Gene.
I decline to adopt a view that what was imperatively necessary for the nation cannot be done by the president unless he finds some specific authorization for it. My belief was that it was not only his right but his duty to do anything that the needs of the nation demanded, unless such action was provided by the Constitution or by law.
Ms. Rosenthal. It's me, Coach Dickerson, sorry. I was just trying to whisper. I said Ms. Rosenthal because somebody's reading something out loud. What's up? No, the kids are just supposed to be able to is it just not letting them log in? Sometimes what happens is people don't shut them down, and so then it won't let them log in. So what they need to do is restart it and then see if that will work. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Sorry. Keep going.
It's okay. I did not usurp power, but I did greatly broaden the use of executive power. I acted whenever and in whatever manner was necessary, unless prevented by direct constitutional or legislative prohibition. The course I followed was of regarding the executive as subject only to the people and, under the Constitution, bound to serve the people affirmatively in cases where the Constitution does not explicitly forbid him to render the service.
Thank you very much. All right, so we got interrupted there a little bit, but we've got obviously a different perspective, right? So again, what we're focusing on is you got to think about, well, Teddy Roosevelt, progressive era president.
Yeah, this is like the New Deal type.
No, that's FDR. So this is going to be like all the very good, like the big stick diplomacy. It's going to be the time period where we had the antitrust legislation, the monopolies, getting rid of political bosses, all of that kind of stuff. So definitely a very progressive time where we did a lot of different things. So think about that in relationship, and how is what he's saying about presidential power maybe a little bit different than what Lincoln said?
Yeah,
Said
like, he'll do everything
he
to
can,
help the
he's not
people,
gonna break
but
the
he's not gonna
Constitution.
control.
Good. I always think of this is like the kid, some of you might be this way, that you maybe get in trouble for something and your answer is, but you didn't say I couldn't. You know what I mean? There are people who are maybe willing to push and stretch. So when you give somebody affirmative authority, what you're saying is, I have granted you permission to do something. Roosevelt's saying, I didn't need explicit permission. Couldn't be told I couldn't. If you say I can't, I won't.
Zach, Grover, Cleveland, Taft. They all look the same.
They're little bit pictures.
Look on the wall.
Did Taft what?
Didn't Taft get
He goes to
started?
Nebraska.
Yeah.
Said he's willing.
That is what most people remember about Taft, that he was large. He did get stuck in a bathtub. I mean, look, he's going to go on to serve on the Supreme Court as a Supreme Court justice. I mean, there were a lot of good things, but our memory of him is very different. So, finally, we're going to look at a quote from Taft. Do I have somebody who wants to read this? Go ahead, David.
The true view of the executive functions is, as I conceive it, that the President can exercise no power which cannot be fairly and reasonably traced to some specific grant of power, or justly implied and included within such express grant as proper and necessary to his exercise. Such specific grant must be either in the federal Constitution or an act of Congress passed in pursuant thereof. There is no undefined residuum of power necessarily in general terms of order not to embarrass the executive within the field of action plainly marked for him, and his jurisdiction must be justified and vindicated by affirmative constitutional or statutory provision or authority.
All right. So, a third and final view on presidential power. How is Taft's view different than the two that preceded him?
He's saying we can't do anything unless it says we can't.
Very good. Good. I need literal, express, affirmative authority to take an action. So either Congress or the Constitution must grant me affirmative authority, or that is not a power that I have. Do you guys remember anything else about Taft?
I don't think he liked being president.
Right, yeah, he wasn't really crazy about it. I think that's a good point. Who did he follow? Let's find his picture on the
He's
wall.
right over there, Woodrow Wilson. Theodore, and then.
Right? So, not a whole lot longer, like right after Roosevelt, right? And you guys might remember, do you remember learning about the election of 1800 and the Bull Moose Party and all of that kind of stuff? So Roosevelt chose Taft to be his successor. Remember? That was the person when he didn't want to be president anymore, and then he wasn't happy with the direction that Taft went. Do you remember why? Well, he just didn't go far enough. He just didn't feel like the Republicans were being as progressive as he hoped that they would be. So then he formed his own third party and ran, and that's what caused Wilson to win the next election. Okay? So we don't remember a ton. The Taft administration did continue a lot of things. They did continue the trust busting. There were many things that they continued. It just wasn't what Roosevelt's picture of it should have been. Okay? All right, so now what I want you guys to do is I want you to flip your paper just to the back of this first page. And David Hobson, if you'll read the first question for us, please.
Interactive question, please.
Yeah, where it says interactive question, question 1.
How does the time and circumstances of history dictate